Hello, everyone. Good evening and happy Wednesday. I know, story time is normally Tuesday, but I was not up to story time last night, so we moved it to tonight, especially because right now there are issues in Foundry and Forge and everything for Pathfinder, so our Pathfinder game isn't happening. So, on a special night, I bring you Split Infinity, Book 1 of the Apprentice Adept series by Piers Anthony. As always, let's talk a little bit about what happened in our last reading. And of course, you can always go out to youtube.com/at Sir Arminius, spelled at Sir Arminius, and listen to any of the previous chapters. But quick recap. So Stile had tamed Nasa. He explained to her that he needed to get to somewhere with some safety. She was taking him, somewhere, and they ended up detouring to go talk to her brother, Clip, because Nasa doesn't really talk. And so Nasa went and got Clip. Clip explained what was going on, gave clothes to Stile, as well as a rapier. And so, we went through with that. Then we had a nice little flashback of Stile and the time that he spent with Toon and how he got himself promoted to being a writer rather than just being a stable hand, because he never realized what the reason was, and it was because he's a little man, and jockeys tend to be little men. So he, we went through him getting promoted, and being able to go in and and walk a horse across the barren terrain of Proton, as part of his promotions and his good things and becoming a jockey and all of that good stuff. We learned how he had chosen to learn the broadsword because that was where he had time to learn something, and that's what he learned it on. So he didn't learn it on the rapier as would be expected for someone of his size. He learned on the broadsword. And then, I should mention, right, basically most of that was a flashback that occurred after he was struck down by some foul magic. Doesn't know what happened. He was working out with the rapier and training with Nasa. The picture on the cover of the book, he was working out and practicing the rapier with Nasa, and he suddenly felt feverish and flushed and passed out. And he said, hostile magic, and, and went down. Then we had our flashback of him with the Toon. Toon eventually having to leave the planet because she was at the end of her tenure. She named her son after Toon, or after Stile. What a nice person she was. Makes you wonder what the husband was thinking about that, right? Must not have known. And there we are. So we will be moving back into the land of Phase and our magic world as we start our reading this evening. We'll be starting at chapter 10. Again, you are welcome to go and listen to any of the previous chapters out on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. But let's just go ahead and get ourselves started for this evening. So sit back, everyone, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive in, starting in Chapter 10 of Split Infinity. Chapter 10, Magic. Stile woke suddenly, making a significant connection. Geography! He cried. This world is Proton! Nasa, in girl form, was tending him. He realized in a kind of supplementary revelation that she was the same size as Toon. No wonder he had accepted her as a lover so readily, despite his knowledge of her nature. She was not a true woman, and would never be, but she was well worthwhile on her own account. She looked at him questioningly, aware of his stare. Her appearance and personality were, of course, quite unlike Toon's. No light-hued hair, no merry cleverness here. Nasa was dark and quiet, and she never told a lie. I had a memory, he explained, beginning with my fencing lessons, because you were teaching me how to use the rapier when I... He paused, trying to assimilate it. What happened to me? Reluctantly, she said, Sick. Sick? You mean as in disease? But there's no disease on Proton. Again, he did a double take. But this isn't Proton exactly. It's another realm with the same geography. The Purple Mountains to the south. It's what Proton might have been, had it had a decent atmosphere. An alternate Proton, where magic works. Maybe magic made the atmosphere and the gravity. So, with a complete planetary environment, a complete ecology, there are flies, there's dirt, there is disease. And of course, I have no natural immunity, only my standard shots, which never anticipated the complete spectrum of challenges I found here. The microorganisms in the food here, in the water, natural for natives, but foreign to my system. Pollens in the air, allergens, etc. So it took a couple of days for the germs to incubate in my system. Then suddenly they overwhelmed me, reaching the point of explosive infestation. Thanks for explaining it so well, Nasa. She smiled acknowledgement. But how could you cure me? I should have died, or at least been sick longer than this. And I've only been out a few hours, haven't I? Now I feel fine, not even tired. She had to speak again. Clip brought amulet. She reached forward and touched a figurine hanging on a necklace that had been put on him. Stile lifted it in his hand. A healing amulet? Now isn't that clever? Will I get sick again if I take it off? She shook her head no. You mean these things emit their magic in one burst, then are useless? But some are supposed to have continuing effect, like the clothing simulator amulet I was given at the outset. Uh-oh. He hastily removed the chain from his neck. That one tried to kill me. If this one was made by the same party... She shrugged. Do you mind if I dispose of this now? He asked. We could bury it and mark the spot so we can find it later if we want it. But I'd rather not have it with me. If I invoke a secondary function... Well, Nasa, an amulet attacked me before I met you. When I invoked it, you invoked this one, so maybe that's why it acted normally. I fear the amulets have murder in mind for me when they recognize me. That's why I needed a steed, to get away from my anonymous enemy. Nasa lifted her head, alarmed in the equine manner. No, no, you didn't bring the enemy here, Stile reassured her. The demon hasn't been invoked. He took her hand, smiling. I chose better than I knew when I chose you. You did right, Nasa. I think you saved my life. She allowed herself to be drawn into him, and there followed what followed. He had not forgotten Sheen, but this was another world. They buried the amulet and went on. It was morning. His illness had lasted only one night, coinciding with normal sleep, and the revelation of geography had almost been worth it. This accounted for the nagging familiarity he had sensed before. He had seen the surface of this world a decade ago, in its dead form. What accounted for this difference? The concept of alternate worlds, or alternate frames of the same world, he could accept. But breathable atmosphere, a full living ecology, and magic in one, domes and science and external bareness in the other. That dichotomy was harder to fathom. He would have expected parallel frames to be very similar to each other. Still, it helped his sense of orientation. Now it was clear why people crossed over at certain spots. They were not matter transmitting. They were stepping through the curtain at precise geographical locations so as to arrive in domes and in private places. To cross elsewhere? Well, if he tried that, he would have to prepare himself with a breathing mask. You know, Nasa, he said as he rode, there is a lot I don't know about this world, and my life is in danger here. But I think I like it better than my own. Out here, with you, I'm happy. I could just ride forever, I think. Like this. He shook his head. But I suppose I would get tired of it in a century or two. Must be realistic. Nasa made a musical snort, then broke into a 2-beat gallop, front hooves striking precisely together, rear hooves likewise. It was a jolting gait. Think you can buck me off, huh? Stile said playfully. He brought out his harmonica. One advantage of clothing, he discovered, was that it had pockets, and played a brisk marching melody. The girl tune had taught him the beauty of music, and his growing talent in it had helped him on numerous occasions in the game. His memory flashback had freshened his awareness that even had music been worthless in a practical sense, he would have kept it up. Music was fun. But again, a looming presence developed. Again they stopped. Something funny about this, Stile said. Clip told me not to worry, that unicorns are immune to most magic. But this is eerie. I don't like mysteries that may affect my health. Nasa blew a note of agreement. It seems to happen when we're playing music, he continued. Now, I've never been harmed by music, but I'd better be sure. Maybe something is sneaking up while we're playing, hoping we won't notice. I somehow doubt this is connected with the amulets. This is more subtle. Let's try it again. If we feel the presence, I'll stop playing and we'll try to search it out. You go on playing as if nothing is happening. We need to catch it by surprise. They resumed play, and immediately the presence returned. Stile left his harmonica at his lips but ceased playing. Instead, he peered about while Nasa danced on, continuing the melody. But even as he looked, whatever it was faded. Experimentally, Stile resumed play, matching Nasa's theme, softly, so that an on-listener would not hear him. The presence returned. Nasa stopped playing while Stile continued, and the presence loomed stronger, as if her magic had restrained it. Stile halted abruptly, and the music receded. It's tied to me, he exclaimed. Only when I play. Nasa agreed. Whatever it was after Stile, and it advanced only when he was playing. You could hear him, regardless of other sounds that masked his own. Stile felt an eerie chill. Let's get out of here, he said. The unicorn took off. No clever footwork this time. She moved right into a racing gallop. They forged across the plain at a rate no horse could match, wove through copses of brightly green trees, and leaped across streams. He could see the mountains sliding by on either side. They were really covering the kilometers. At last, Nasa slowed, for her breath was turning fiery. Stile brought out his harmonica and played once more, and instantly the presence closed in. He stopped immediately. We can't outrun it, Nasa. That's evident. But now that we're aware of it, maybe we can do something about it. Why does it still come only when I play? It has to know that we are aware of it and are trying to escape it. No further need to hide. Nasa shrugged. An interesting effect while he was mounted. First the amulet, now this. Could they be connected? Could the harmonica be? He paused, alarmed. Another amulet? After a moment he developed a notion. Nasa, do you think you can play this instrument? With your mouth, I mean, human fashion. If this is an enemy summoning device, there should be the same effect whoever plays it, I think. Nasa halted and had him dismount and remove the saddle. Then she phased into human form. He had not seen her do it by day before, and it had not occurred to him that she would. He had thought of her playing the harmonica in her equine form, but of course, this way made much more sense. She took the instrument and played. She was not an expert, since this was foreign to her mode, and the result was a jumble. No presence formed. Then Stile took the harmonica and played a similar jumble, and the presence was there. Not the instrument, but me, he said. Only when I play it. He pondered. Is it a symbiosis, or is the harmonica incidental? He tried humming a tune, and the presence came, though not as powerfully as before. That settles it. It's me. When I make music, it comes. My music is better with the harmonica, so the effect is stronger, that's all. The instrument is not haunted. He smiled. I'm glad. I like this harmonica. I'd hate to have to bury it in the dirt. He would hate to abuse any harmonica, because he retained a fond feeling for the keyboard harmonica and all its relatives. But this present instrument was the finest of its breed he had ever played. Nasa had changed back to her natural form. Stile put the saddle back on. I don't think we can afford to ignore this matter, he said. The unicorn flicked one ear in agreement. Let's get down to some good grazing land and I'll challenge it. I want to see what will happen. I don't like running away from a threat anyway. I'd rather draw it out and settle the account one way or another. If it is an enemy, I want to summon it by daylight with my sword in hand, not have it sneak up on me at night. Nasa agreed emphatically. They moved downslope until good grass resumed. Nasa grazed, but she did not wander far from Stile, and her eye was on him. She was concerned, bless her. It had been a long time since someone had worried about him. Except for Sheen, and that was a matter of programming. Stile began to play. The presence loomed. He tried to see it, but it was invisible, intangible. This time he did not stop his music. The grass seemed to wave, bending toward him and springing back as if driven by a wind. But there was no wind. The air seemed to sparkle. A faint haze developed, swirling in barely discernible colored washes. Stile felt the hairs on his body lighten, as if charged electrostatically. He thought at first it was his own nervousness, for he did not know what thing or force he summoned, but he saw Nesa's mane lifting similarly. There was potential here, and it centered on him, but it never acted. It just loomed. Stile stopped playing, growing weary of this, and yet again the effect faded. Almost the form of an electrical storm, he mused. Yet he was cut off by a sheet of rain blasting at him. Lightning cracked nearby. The sudden light half blinded him, and a gust of wind made him stagger. He was soaked as if dunked in a raging sea, feeling the eerie chill of the violent water. There was a swirling of fog reminiscent of a developing tornado. The flashes of light were continuous. Nesa charged back to him, seeking to protect him from the elements with her body and her anti-magic. Both helped. Stile flung his arms about her neck and buried his face in her wet mane, and the swirling wind had less force there. Her mass was more secure than his, and the rain struck her less stingingly. They settled to the ground, and that was more secure yet. "Now I'm embracing you in your natural form," he told her laughingly, but doubted she heard him over the wind. What had happened? A moment ago there had been no slightest sign of bad weather. Stile knew storms could develop quickly. He had taken a course in primitive world meteorology, and often visited the weather dome for demonstrations. But this had been virtually instantaneous. He had been playing his harmonica, trying to trigger whatever monstrous force was lurking, to bring it somehow to bay, then idly likened the effect to, "I did it!" he cried. "I invoked the storm!" Like the amulet, it had been there to be commanded, and he had innocently done so. "Storm, abate!" he cried. The two of them were almost swept from their impromptu nest by another savage bout of wind. The storm was not, it seemed, paying heed. Yet this power was somehow keyed to him. He had invoked the storm. Was he unable to banish it? He had evoked the demon from the amulet before. That had evidently been a one-way thing. But a storm? Was it impossible to put this genie back in the bottle? It was hard to concentrate in this buffeting and wet and light and noise. But he tried. What specifically had he done to bring this about? He had played music, and the storm spirit had loomed close without striking. Then he had said, almost the form of an electrical storm. An accidental rhyme of no significance. Rhyme. Something nagged at him. When the harmonica had appeared so fortuitously, what had he said? Hadn't it been, "Yes, a harmonica is what you play. I wish I had one here today." Something like that. Joke doggerel. 2 times he had spoken in rhyme, and 2 times he had been answered. Of course there had been other magic, like the attacking demon of the amulet. No rhymes there. But worry about that later. It might be a different class of magic. Now, try to abate this tempest. Abate. What rhymed with that? Fate, late, plate. Try it. All he could do was fail. "Storm abate! You're making me late!" he cried. The storm lessened, but did not disappear. He was on to something, but not enough. Half a loaf. What else had he done those other 2 times? Nasa played a note on her horn. The storm had eased, so she preferred to stand. She felt most secure on all 4 feet. That was it. He had been blowing his horn. In a manner, the harmonica, making music, either singing or playing. Stile brought out his wet harmonica and played a soggy passage. Then he stopped and sang in an impromptu tune. "Storm abate, you're making me late." This time, the storm lessened considerably. The lightning stopped and the rain slackened to a moderate shower. But it still wasn't gone. "Nasa, I think I'm onto something," he said, "but I don't really have the hang of it yet. I think I can do magic, if I can only get the rules straight." The unicorn gave him a long look whose import was unclear. Evidently, she distrusted this development, but she made no comment. And he marveled at himself. How could he, the child of the modern civilized galaxy, seriously consider practicing magic? Yet, after what he had experienced in this frame, how could he not believe in magic? They resumed their journey, plodding through the drizzle. After an hour, they got out of it, and the sun warmed them. They did not make music. Stile knew he had learned something, but not enough. Yet. Now they settled down to serious grazing and eating, except that he had nothing to eat. Nasa had been willing to continue until she brought him to a fruit tree, but he had felt her sustenance was more important than his, at the moment. She was doing most of the work. If he could actually do magic, maybe he could conjure some food. If he made up a rhyme and sang it, why not? What rhymed with food? Stile was actually a poet, in a minor sense. This was yet another aspect of his game expertise. A person had to be extremely well-rounded to capture and hold a high rung on an adult ladder. He was probably more skilled in more types of things of a potentially competitive nature than anyone not involved in the game. But he had preferred meaning to rhyme and meter in poetry, so was ill prepared for this particular exercise. Still, he did know the rudiments of versification, and with a little practice it should come back to him. Iambic feet, da-dum, da-dum. Pentameter, 5 feet per line. I wish I had a little food. Iambic tetrameter, 4 beats. If unicorns spoke words while running, they would be excellent at poetic meter, for their hooves would measure the cadence. I wish I had a little food. It would really help my mood, he said in sing-song. He was not as good at improvising tunes with his voice as with an instrument. Before him appeared a tiny cube. It dropped to the ground, and he had to search for it in the grass. He found it and held it up. It was about a centimeter on the side, and in tiny letters on one face was printed the word food. Stile touched his tongue to it. Neutro peanut butter. He ate it. Good, but only a token. Well, he had specified little. That was exactly what he had gotten. He was gaining understanding. Music summoned the magic. That was the looming power they had been aware of. Words defined it. The rhyme marked the moment of implementation. A workable system, but he had to make his definitions precise. Suppose he conjured a sword and it transfixed him, or a mountain of food and it buried him. Magic, like any other tool, had to be used properly. I wish I had 1 liter of food. It would really help my mood. Nothing happened. Obviously, he was still missing something. Nasa lifted her head. perking her ears. Her hearing was more acute than his. Her head came around. Stile followed the direction her horn was pointing and saw shapes coming toward them. Had he summoned these? He doubted it. They hardly looked like food, and certainly not in the specified quantity. This must be a coincidental development. Soon the shapes clarified. 4 monsters. They were vaguely ape-like, with huge long forearms, squat hairy legs, and great toothy, horny, glary-eyed heads. Another variant of demon, like the one he had fought alone, or the crack monsters, or the snow monsters. They all seemed to be a species of a general class of creature that wasn't in the conventional taxonomy. But of course, unicorns weren't in it either. Nasa snorted. She trotted over to stand by Stile. Stile knew this was trouble. Must be a sending of my enemy, Stile said. When you use the amulet to heal me, it alerted the Master of Amulets, who it seems is not partial to me. For what reason? I don't yet know. He sent his goon squad, but we were no longer with the amulet, so they had to track us down. I'll bet the storm messed them up too. Nasa made a musical laugh through her horn. A nice effect. She liked the notion of goons getting battered by a storm. But her attention remained on those monsters, and her ears were angling back. She looked cute when her ears perked forward, and grim when they flattened back. I think it must be an adept against me, Stile continued. Obviously it is no common peasant. But now I know I can do some magic myself, I am more confident. Do you think we should flee these monsters and worry about when they might catch up again, such as when we're sleeping? Or should we fight them here? It was a loaded question, and she responded properly. She swished her tail rapidly from side to side and stomped a forehoof, her horn still oriented on the goons. My sentiments exactly, Stile said. I just don't like leaving an enemy on my trail. Let me see if I can work out a good spell to abolish them. That should be safer than indulging in physical combat. They look pretty mean to me. Pretty mean indeed. His tone had been light, but he already had healthy respect for the fighting capacity of demons. They were like the androids of Proton. Stupid, but almost indestructible. Yet he distrusted this magic he could perform. Like all sudden gifts, it needed to be examined in the mouth before being accepted wholeheartedly. But at the moment, he simply had to use what was available, and hope it worked. He concentrated on his versification as the goons approached. He could not, under this pressure, think of anything sophisticated, but so long as it was clear and safe, it would do. It had to. The first monster loomed before them. "Monster, go! I tell you so!" Stile sang, pointing. The monster puffed into smoke and dissipated. Only a foul-smelling haze remained. So far, so good. He was getting the hang of it. Stile pointed to the second monster. "Monster, go! I tell you so!" he sang, exactly as before. Why change a winning spell? The monster hesitated as if fazed by the bite of a gnat, then plunged ahead. Nasa lunged by Stile and caught the demon on her horn. With one heave, she hurled it over and behind. The creature gave a great howl of expiration, more in fury than in pain, and landed in a sodden heap. Why had the magic worked the first time, but not the second? He had done it exactly the same, and nearly gotten his head bitten off. Oh no! Could it be that a spell could not be repeated? That it only worked once? Now he remembered something that had been said by the man he met, the one who had given him the demon amulet, about having to devise a new spell each time, to step through the curtain. He should have paid better attention. The third and fourth goons arrived together. No time now to work up another spell. Stile drew his rapier. "I'll take the one on the right. You take the left," he said to Nasa. But these two monsters, having seen the fate of their predecessors, were slightly more cautious. To be ugly was not necessarily to be stupid, and these were not really androids. They evidently learned from experience. They halted just outside the range of horn and sword. They seemed to consider Nasa to be the more formidable opponent, though Stile was sure it was him they wanted. They had to deal with her first. Then they would have him at their dubious mercy. Or so they thought. While one goon tried to distract her, backing away from the unicorn's horn, the other tried to get at her from the side. But Stile attacked the side monster, stabbing at it with his point. He wished he had a broadsword. Then he could have slashed these things to pieces. He wasn't sure that a simple puncture would have much effect. He was mistaken. He pricked his monster in the flank, and it howled and whirled on him. Huge ham hands stretching toward him. Stile pricked it again, in its meaty shoulder. Not a mortal wound, but it obviously hurt. At least these demons did have pain sensation. Stile had half feared they would not. Still, this was basically a standoff. He needed to get at a vital spot before the thing. The goon's arm swung with blinding speed and swept the weapon out of Stile's hand. The thing's eyes glowed. Gratified, it pounced on him. Stile whirled into a shoulder throw, catching the monster's leading arm and heaving. With this technique, it was possible for the smallest of men to send the largest of men flying. But this was not a man. The creature was so large and long-armed that Stile merely ended up with a hairy arm dangling over his shoulder. The monster's feet had not left the ground. Now the goon raised its arm, hauling Stile into the air. He felt its hot breath on his neck. It was going to bite off his head. "Oh, swell! Go to hell!" Stile cried with haphazard inspiration. He dropped to the ground. The monster was gone. Stile looked around, pleased. His impromptu spell had worked. It seemed this frame did have a hell, and he could send. He froze. The other goon was gone too. So was Nasa. Oh no! Quick, a counterspell. Anything. What rhymed with spell? "I don't feel well. Cancel that spell," he sing-songed. The two monsters and Nasa were back. All three were scorched and coated with soot. "Monsters away! Nasa stay!" Stile sang. The goons vanished again. Nasa looked at him reproachfully. She shook herself, making the powdered soot fly. There were sulfur smears on her body, and her mane was frizzled, and her tail was only half its normal length. Her whole body was a mass of singed hair. The whites showed all around her eyes, sure signal of equine alarm. "I'm sorry, Nasa," Stile said contritely. "I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to send you to hell." But he realized that wasn't much good. She was burned and hurting. He had to do more than merely apologize. He could do magic, if he sang a new spell every time. Could he make her well? "To show how I feel, I say, Nasa, heal." And before his eyes, she unburned. Her mane grew out again, and her tail became long and black and straight. Her coat renewed its luster. Her hooves bright, but she must have had a truly disturbing emotional experience. A visit to hell. How could he erase that horror? Could he formulate a spell to make her forget? But that would be tampering with her mind. And if he made any similar error in definition, no, he dared not mess with that. Nasa was looking at him strangely, as she had before. Stile feared he knew why. Nasa, how many people in this world can perform magic like this? He asked her. I know most people can do minor magic, like stepping through the curtain, the way most people can pick out clumsy melodies on the harmonica. But how many can do it well? Professional level? Many? She blew a negative note. That's what I thought. A lot of people have a little talent, but few have a lot of talent in any particular area. This sort of thing is governed by the bell-shaped curve, and it would be surprising if magic talent weren't similarly constrained. So can a moderate number match my level? She still blew no. A few? This time the negation was fainter. A very few? At last the affirmative. Stile nodded. How many can exert magic against a unicorn, since unicorns are largely proof against magic? Nasa looked at him, her nervousness increasing. Her muzzle quivered. Her ears were drawing back. Bad news for him. Only the Adepts? Stile asked. She blew yes, backing away from him. The whites of her eyes were showing again. But Nasa, if I have such talent, I'm still the same person, he cried. You don't have to be afraid of me. I didn't mean to send you to hell. I just don't know my own power. She snorted emphatic agreement and backed another step. I don't want to alienate you, Nasa. You're my only friend in this world. I need your support. He took a step toward her, but she leaned away from him on all 4 feet. She feared him and distrusted him now. It was as if he had become a demon, shuffling off his prior disguise. Oh, Nasa, I wish you wouldn't feel this way. The magic isn't half as important as your respect. You joined me when you could have killed me. We have been so much to each other these past 3 days. She made a small nose at him, angry that he should try to prevail on her like this. He had sent her to hell. He had shown her how demeaning and dangerous to her his power could be. Yet she was moved. She did not want to desert him. I never set out to be a magician, Stile said. I thought the magic was from outside. I had to know the truth. Maybe the truth is worse than what I feared. Nasa snorted agreement. She was really dead set against this caliber of magic. Would it help if I swore not to try any more magic? To conduct myself as if that power did not exist in me? I am a man of my word, Nasa. I would be as you have known me. She considered, her ears nicking backward and forward as the various considerations ran through her equine mind. At last she nodded almost imperceptibly. I swear, Stile said, to perform no magic without your leave. There was an impression of faint color in the air about him, flinging outward. The grass waved in concentric ripples that expanded rapidly until lost to view. Nasa's own body seemed to change color momentarily as the ripples passed her. Then all was normal again. Nasa came to him. Stile flung his arms about her neck, hugging her. There was a special art to hugging an equine, but it was worth the effort. Oh, Nasa, what is more important than friendship? She was not very demonstrative in her natural form, but the way she cocked one ear at him and nudged him with her muzzle was enough. Nasa returned to her grazing. Stile was still hungry. There was no suitable food for him here, and since he had sworn off magic, he could not conjure anything to eat. Actually, he found himself somewhat relieved to be free of magic. But what was he to say to his stomach? Then he spied the monster Nasa had slain. Were goons edible? This seemed to be the occasion to find out. He drew his knife and set about carving the demon. Nasa spied what he was doing. She played a note of reassurance, then galloped around in a great circle several times, while Stile gathered brush and dead wood and dry straw to form a fire. When he had his makings ready, Nasa charged in, skidded to a halt, and snorted out a blowtorch blast. She had evidently not yet cooled off from the battle, or from hell, and needed only a small amount of exertion to generate sufficient heat. The brush burst into flame. As it turned out, Monster Steak was excellent. There is Chapter 10 for us. The Known Dark Senate. Good evening. Thank you for following. Welcome to the channel. So I have played Dungeons and Dragons in the past, and actually Wednesday is normally my Pathfinder night. It just so happens that we play Pathfinder on Foundry VTT. We have multiple different campaigns that we're running, and the GM that's running it right now, they recently had a stable upgrade to version 13 of Foundry. We normally wait a little while before we update because, as with all updates, things can get buggy. Well, he updated too early, and things were buggy. He was playing on Monday, and it's just broken right now. So we decided not to play Pathfinder tonight because until they fix Foundry, it's really not so playable. When he's playing it through, he uses Forge to host it, and it's just not playable at the moment. So he decided not to run it tonight. Well, yesterday I had a medical procedure. Yesterday is the night I normally would have been reading Split Infinity. I had a medical procedure yesterday, wasn't feeling up to it, so he wasn't going to do Pathfinder tonight. We moved Split Infinity to tonight. But yeah, I prefer Pathfinder to D&D largely because D&D does not feel like it allows as much player agency as Pathfinder does. You go up a level and it's very kind of locked in what you can do. There's very little change of what you can be. Pathfinder, on the other hand, gives you a lot more latitude to create the character in the rule set the way that you want it to be. And so as a whole, our group just kind of moved to Pathfinder, and we have found that we enjoy it much more. I hope that answers your question on that. I do like D&D just fine. I like Pathfinder more. So that's where we play. I hope that helps. All right, guys, so we have made it through Chapter 10. We found out that Stile has Adept level magic. But we have also found that because Nasa doesn't like it, as could be expected, he has sworn off using magic without her say-so. So, there we go. Now we will continue. Excuse me. We'll start ourselves into Chapter 11 here in just one moment. All right, here we go. Chapter 11, Oracle. By the time they reached the Oracle 2 days later, Stile had pretty well worked out the situation. He could do magic of adept quality, provided he followed its rules. He had sworn off it, and he would not violate that pledge. But that didn't change what he was: an adept. That could explain why another adept was trying to kill him. That other was aware of Stile's potential and didn't want the competition. The adepts, it seemed, were quite jealous of their prerogatives, as were the members of most oligarchs or holders of power. So how should he proceed? Swearing off magic would not protect him from a jealous adept, who would resent Stile's mere potential. But if it were only a single adept who was after him, Stile might try to locate that one and deal with him. Non-magically? That could be dangerous. So he would ask the Oracle for advice. Why not? The Oracle lived in a palace. Manicured lawns and hedges surrounded it, and decorative fountains watered its gardens. It was open. Anyone could enter, including animals. In this world, animals had much the same stature as human beings. That was one of the things Stile liked about it. In this palace and its grounds, as he understood it, no magic was permitted, other than that of the Oracle itself, and no person could be molested or coerced. No disrespect intended, Stile said, but this doesn't seem like much. It's beautiful in appearance and concept, but... Nasa left the saddle at the entrance and guided him to a small, plain room in the back. From its rear wall projected a simple speaking tube. Stile studied the tube. This is it? The Oracle? He asked dubiously. No ceremony, no fanfare, no balls of flame, no bureaucracy. I can just walk up and ask it anything. Nasa nodded. Stile, feeling let down, addressed the tube. Oracle, what is my best course of action? Know thyself, the tube replied. That isn't clear. Could you elucidate? But the tube was unresponsive. Nasa nudged him gently away. You mean I only get one question? Stile asked, chagrined. It was so. As with a spell, the Oracle could only be invoked once by any individual. But it had not been Nasa's purpose to have all his questions answered here. She had brought him to this place only for his safety. Stile, frustrated, left Nasa and went outside. She did not try to restrain him, aware that he had been disappointed. He proceeded to the first fountain he saw. A wolf sat on the far side. Probably not tame, but it would not attack him here. Stile removed his shirt, leaned over the pool, and splashed the cold water on his face. So he was safe. So what? His curiosity was unsatisfied. Was he to remain indefinitely in this world without understanding it? Thou too? Stile looked up, startled, blinking the droplets from his vision. There was a young man across the fountain. He had shaggy reddish hair and a dark cast of feature, with eyes that fairly gleamed beneath heavy brows. His beard and sideburns were very like fur. I regret I did not see you, Stile said. Did I intrude? Thou didst see me, the man said, but recognized me not in my lupine form. Lupine? A werewolf? Stile asked, surprised. I am not used to this land. I did not think. I apologize. That was evident in thy mode of speech. but apologize not to an outcast cur. Mode of speech. Suddenly, Stile remembered. Clip the Unicorn, Nesa's brother, had used this same touch of archaic language. Evidently, that was what prevailed here. He had better change over, so as not to make himself awkwardly obvious. I will try to mend my speech, but I do apologize for mistaking thee. None such is in order. This region is open to all without hindrance, even such as I. Stile was reminded of the robot Sheen, claiming to have no rights because of her metal origin. It bothered him. Art thou not a person? If being outcast is a crime, I am surely more criminal than you. Thee. I fled my whole world. Ah, it is as I thought. Thou art from Proton. Art thou serf or citizen? Serf, Stile said, startled at this knowledge of his world. Yet, of course, others had made the crossing before him. Werewolf, if thou hast patience, I would like to talk with thee. I welcome converse, if thou knowest what ilk I be, and be not deceived. I am Kurlgaya, where? I am Stile, man. Stile proffered his hand, and the other, after a pause such as one might have when recalling a foreign convention, accepted it. In mine other form we sniff tails, Kurlgir said apologetically. There is so much I do not know about this world, Stile said. If you know, thou knowest of my world, thou willst, thou shouldst appreciate the problem I have. I know not, I know not how came I here, or how to return. And the oracle's reply seems unhelpful. It is the nature of oracular response, Kurlgir agreed. I am similarly baffled. I queried the oracle how I might regain my place in my society without performing anathema, and the oracle told me, cultivate blue. Means that aught to thee? Stile shook his head. Not. I asked it what was my best course of action, and it said, know thyself. I have no doubt that is always good advice, but it lacks specificity. In fact, it is not even an action. It is an information. A most curious lapse, Kurlgir agreed. Come, walk with me about the gardens. Perhaps we may obtain insights through dialogue. I shall be happy to. Allow me just a moment to advise my companion. She brought me here. Assuredly. They re-entered the palace, proceeding to the oracle chamber where Stile had left Nesa. She was still there, facing the speaking tube, evidently unable to make up her mind what to say to it. Kurlgir growled when he saw her, shifting instantly into his lupine mode. Nesa, hearing him, whirled, her horn orienting unwaveringly on the new-formed wolf. Stop! Stile cried, realizing that violence was in the offing. There is no... The wolf sprang, Nesa lunged. Stile threw himself between them. All three came to a halt in a momentary tableau. The tip of Nesa's horn was nudging Stile's chest. The wolf's teeth were set against his right arm, near the shoulder. Trickles of blood were forming on Stile's chest and arm where point and fang penetrated. Now, will you both change into human form and apologize to the Oracle for this accident? Stile said. There was a pause. Then both creatures shimmered and changed. Stile found himself standing between a handsome young man and a pretty girl. He was shirtless, with rivulets of blood on him. He had forgotten to put his shirt back on after splashing in the fountain pool. He extricated himself. I gather unicorns and werewolves are hereditary enemies, he said. I'm sorry, I didn't know. But this is no place for, uh, friendly competition. Now shake hands or sniff tails or whatever creatures do here to make up. Nesa's eyes fairly shot fire, and Kurlgeir scowled. But both glanced at the oracle tube, then at Stile's bloodied spots, then at each other, and paused again. Stile perceived, as if through their eyes, what each saw. The werewolf's clothing had reappeared with the man, and it was a tasteful fur-lined jacket and leggings, complementing his somewhat rough-hewn aspect. Nesa was in a light black dress that set off her pert figure admirably. It seemed she wore clothing when she chose, though at night she had not bothered. She was now the kind of girl to turn any man's head, and Kurlgeir's head was turning.
It is a place of truce, the werewolf said at last. I regret my instinct overcoming my manners.
I, too, Nesa agreed softly.
I abhor the fact that I have drawn the blood of an innocent.
I, too.
Do thou draw my blood, Stile, in recompense.
Kurlgeir held out his arm. Nesa did the same.
I shall not,
Stile said. If thou, the two of you... The werewolf smiled fleetingly.
Thou wert correct the first time, friend. It is the plural.
If you two feel you owe me aught, expiate it by making up to each other. I hate to be the cause of dissent between good creatures.
The penalty of blood need not be onerous,
Kurlgeir murmured. He made a courtly bow to Nesa.
Thou art astonishingly lovely, equine.
Nesa responded with a curtsy that showed more décolletage and leg than was strictly necessary. Oh, the tricks that could be played with clothing. No wonder the citizens of Proton reserved clothing to themselves. Thank thee, Lupine. Then, cautiously, Nesa extended her hand. Instead of shaking it, Kurlgeir lifted it slightly, bringing it to his face. For a moment, Stile was afraid the werewolf meant to bite it, but instead he kissed her fingers. Stile, relieved, stepped forward and took an arm of each. Let's walk together, now that we're all friends. We have much in common, being all outcasts of one kind or another. Nesa was excluded from the herd because of her color.
What is wrong with her color?
The werewolf asked, perplexed.
Nothing,
Stile said as they walked. He spied his shirt by the fountain and moved them all toward it. Some unicorns have distorted values. Kurlgeir glanced sidelong past Stile at the girl.
I should say so. I always suspected that herd stallion had banged his horn into one rock too many, and this confirms it. My taste does not run to unicorns, understand, but the precepts of physical beauty are universal. She is extremely well formed. Were she a were-bitch?
And I am an outcast because I refuse to perform a service for my employer, Stile continued, or to honor an illegal deal proffered by another citizen. He washed his small wounds off with water from the pool and donned his shirt. What, if I may inquire, was thy problem, werewolf?
Among my kind, where game is scarce, when the size of the pack increases beyond the capacity of the range to support, the oldest must be eliminated first. My sire is among the eldest, a former leader of the pack. So it fell to me to kill him and assume the leadership. Indeed, there is no wolf in my pack I could not slay in fair combat. But I love my sire, long the finest of wolves, and could not do it. Therefore, mine own place in the pack was forfeit, with shame.
Thou wert excluded for thy conscience, Stile exclaimed.
There is no conscience beyond the good of the pack,
the werewolf growled. Yes, Nasa breathed sadly. They came to a hedged-in park, with a fine rock garden in the center. Nasa and Kurlgeir sat down on stones nearer to each other than might have seemed seemingly for natural enemies.
Let us review thy situation. Stile,
the werewolf said.
Thou knowest little of this land, yet this alone should not cause thee undue distress. Thou wilt hardly be in danger with a fair unicorn at thy side.
Nevertheless, I am in danger, Stile said. It seems an adept is trying to kill me.
Then thou art beyond hope. Against adepts, naught suffices save avoidance. Thou must remain here at the Oracle's palace forever.
So I gather. In the ordinary case. But it also seems I have adept powers myself. Kurlgeir phased into wolf form, teeth bared as he backed away from Stile. Wait! Stile cried. Nasa reacted the same way, but I have sworn off magic till Nasa gives me leave. The wolf hesitated, absorbing that, then phased warily back into the man.
No unicorn would grant such leave, even were that not the stubbornest of breeds.
Nasa nodded agreement. But I am just a stray from another world, Stile said. It is mere coincidence that I have the talent for magic.
Coincidence?
Kurlgeir growled.
Precious little in this frame is coincidence. That is merely thy frame's term for what little magic operates there. Here, all things have meaning.
He pondered a moment.
Have ye talent in the other frame?
I ride well. The werewolf glanced at Nasa, who sat with her fine ankles demurely exposed, her bosom gently heaving.
Who wouldn't?
And I am an expert in the game, Stile continued.
The game, that's it. Know ye not the aptitude for magic in this frame correlates with that for the game in that frame? How good are at the game be ye, honestly?
Well, I'm 10th on my age ladder. Kurlgeir waved a warning finger at him.
Think ye I know not the way of the ladders? If ye rise to 5th place, thou must enter the annual tourney. No obfuscation now, this is vital. How good art thou when thou triest? Absolute scale.
Stile realized that this was not the occasion for concealment or polite modesty. I should be among the top 10, gross. On a good day, 4th or 5th.
Then thou art indeed adept caliber. There are no more than 10 adepts. They go by colors: white, yellow, orange, green, and such. No more than there are clear-cut hues. Therefore thou art of their number. One adept must be dead.
What art thou talking about? Why must an adept be dead? Just because I'm good at the game and the other... Stile caught himself about to make an impromptu rhyme and broke off lest he find himself in violation of his oath.
I forget. Thou hast no basis yet to comprehend. Know this, Stile. No man can cross the curtain between frames while his double lives. Therefore,
Double?
his other self, his twin. All true men exist in both frames and are forever fixed where they originate, until one dies out of turn. Then.
Wait. Thou sayest people as well as geography match? That cannot be so. The serfs of Proton are constantly brought in and deported as their tenures expire. Only the citizens are a constant population.
Perhaps 'tis so now, not always in the past. Most people still equate phase to proton, proton to phase. The others are partial people, like myself. Perhaps I had a serf self in the past, and that serf departed, so now I alone remain.
Thou travellest between frames? Because werewolves don't exist on Proton. Kurlgeir shrugged.
It must be so. Here there are animals and special forms. There are more serfs. It balances out likely. But thou must travel because thy magic self is dead. And thy magic self must be.
An adept, Stile finished. At last I get thy drift. Know thyself, Nasa said. Adept. She frowned. That's it, Stile cried. I must figure out which adept I am. Then he noticed Nasa's serious demeanor. Or must I? I've sworn off magic.
But only by exerting thy powers as an adept canst thou hope to survive,
Kurlgeir exclaimed. Then he did a double take.
What am I saying? Who would want to help an adept survive? The fair corn is right. Abandon thy magic.
Corn? Oh, unicorn. What is so bad about being an adept? Stile asked. I should think it would be a great advantage to be able to perform magic. The werewolf exchanged a glance with the unicorn.
He really knows not,
Kurlgeir said. I really don't, Stile agreed. I am aware that magic can be dangerous. So can science. But you both act as if it's a crime. You suggest I would be better off dying as a man than living as an adept. I should think a lot of good could be done by magic.
Mayhaps thou shouldst encounter an adept,
Kurlgeir said. Maybe I should. Even though I'm not doing magic myself, at least I'd like to know who I am and what manner of creature I am. From what thou sayest, something must have happened to my adept double, and, considering my age and health, it couldn't have been natural. He paused. But of course, all we need to do is check which adept died recently.
None has,
Kurlgeir assured him.
At least, none we know of. Adepts are secretive, but even so, someone must be concealing evidence.
Well, I'll just have to go and look, Stile decided. I'll check out each adept until I find which one is dead, and see if that was me. Then I'll be satisfied. Only, how can I be sure that two aren't dead, and I have found the wrong one?
No problem there,
The werewolf said.
Thine other self would have looked exactly like thee. So any who saw thee in his demean would know. and every adept has his own peculiar style of magic. His means of implementation that he alone commands. What style is thine?
Stile, Nasa murmured, permitting herself to smile fleetingly. Spoken or sung in verse, Stile said. Music summons the power. Which adept uses that mode?
We know not. The adepts vouchsafe no such information to common folk. Often they veil their magic in irrelevant forms, speaking incantations when it may in fact be a gesture that is potent, or posturing when it is a key rune, or so it is bruited about among the animal folk. We know not who makes the amulets, or the golem people, or the potions, or graphs, or any of the other conjurations. We only know that these things exist, and know to our dismay their power.
He turned to Stile, taking one hand.
But friend, do not do this thing. If thou findest thine adept self, thou wilt become that adept, and I shall have to bear the onus of not having slain thee when I had the chance. And Nasa too, who helped thee. Lay not this gaze upon her.
Stile turned to Nasa, appalled. Thou feelest that way also? Sadly, she nodded.
Methinks she led thee to the oracle to avoid the peril she saw looming,
Kurlgeir said.
to destroy a friend, or turn an adept loose on the realm. Here thou art safe, even from thy friends.
But I am bound by my oath, Stile said. He hoped he was getting the language right. Thy and my before a consonant, thine and mine before a vowel. I will not perform magic. I will not become the monster thou fearest. I seek only to know. Canst thou deny me that? Slowly, Kurlgeir shook his head.
We cannot deny thee that, yet we wish.
I must know myself, Stile said. The oracle said so.
And the oracle is always right,
The werewolf agreed.
We cannot oppose our paltry judgment to that.
So I will go on a quest for myself, Stile concluded. When I have satisfied my need to know, I will return to mine own frame, where there is no problem about magic. So thou needst have no fear about me turning into whatever ogre thou dost think I might. I have to return soon anyway to get my new employment, or my tenure will expire. Nasa's gaze dropped.
Why carest thou about tenure?
Kurlgeir inquired.
Remain here, in hiding from thine enemy. Thou hast no need to return.
But Proton is my world, Stile protested. I never intended to stay here. The werewolf stood and drew Stile gently aside.
Needs must I speak to thee in language unbecoming for the fair one to hear,
he said. Nasa glanced up quickly at him, but remained sitting silently by the garden. What's this nonsense about unbecoming language? Stile demanded when they were out of Nasa's earshot. I don't keep secrets from.
Canst thou not perceive the mare is smitten with thee?
Kurlgeir demanded.
Canst not guess what manner of question she tried to formulate for the oracle?
Stile suffered a guilty shock. He had compared Nasa in various ways to Sheen, yet missed the obvious one. But I am no unicorn.
And I am no man. Yet I would not, were I thee, speak so blithely of departure. Better it were to cut her heart quickly, cleanly.
Yes. No, Stile agreed, confused. She. We have been. I assumed it was merely a courtesy of the form. I never thought.
And a considerable courtesy it is,
Kurlgeir agreed.
I was careless once myself about such matters, until my bitch put me straight.
He ran his fingers across an old scar that angled from his shoulder dangerously near the throat. Werewolves evidently had quite direct means of expressing themselves.
I say it as should not. Nisa is the loveliest creature one might meet, in either form, and no doubt the most constant too. Shamed would I have been to lay a tooth on her, ere thou didst halt me. Considering the natural antipathy that exists between man and unicorn, as between man and werewolf, and between unicorn and werewolf. Her attachment to thee is a mark of favour most extreme. Unless, chanced thou to be virginal, apart from her?
No.
And most critical of all, canst thou touch her most private parts?
Stile reddened slightly. I just told thee.
Her feet,
Kurlgeir said.
her horn. No stranger durst touch a unicorn's magic extremities.
Why, yes.
Then it must be love. She would not else tolerate thy touch. Mark me, friend, she spared thee when she learned thou wert adept, because she loved thee. And therein lies mischief with her herd. Thou canst not lightly set her aside.
He touched the scar near his throat again. No, Stile agreed fervently, thinking again of Sheen. He had always had a kind of personal magnetism that affected women once they got to know him, though it was usually cancelled out by the initial impression his size and shyness made. Thus, his heterosexual relationships tended to be distant or intimate, with few shades between. But with that situation went a certain responsibility, not to hurt those women who trusted themselves to him. He remembered, with another pang of nostalgia, how the jockey girl tune had stimulated his love, then left him. He had never been able to blame her, and would not have eschewed the affair had he known what was coming. She had initiated him into a world whose dimension he had hardly imagined before. But he did not care to do that to another person. He had no concern about any injury from Nasa. She would never hurt him. She would just quietly take herself away and off a mountain ledge, and never transform into a firefly. She would spare him, not herself. It was her way. Kurlgeir's question was valid. Why couldn't Stile remain here? There was a threat against his life, true, but he had fled Proton because of that too. If he could nullify that threat in this frame, well, there were appeals to this world that rivaled those of the game. In fact, magic itself had, for him, a fascination similar to... No, his oath made that academic. What then of Sheen? He could not simply leave her in doubt. He must return at least long enough to explain. She was a robot. She would understand. The practical thing for him to do was pick the most convenient world and stay there. It would be enough for Sheen to know he was safe. Her mission would then have been accomplished. As he had known Toon was safe and happy. Had that been enough for him? To know she had successfully replaced his arms with those of another man, and given that man, in fact, what she had given Stile in name, a son? He had understood, and she would understand. But was that enough? Yet what else could he do? He could not remain in both frames, could he? In any event, his tenure on Proton was limited, while it seemed unlimited here. Stile returned to Nasa and sat beside her, Kurlgeir trailing. The werewolf has shown me that I cannot expect to solve my problems by fleeing them. I must remain here to find my destiny, only visiting the other frame to conclude mine affairs there. As he said it, he wished he had chosen other phrasing. Nasa responded by lifting her gaze. That was enough. Now for thee, werewolf, Stile said. We must solve thy riddle too. Did it occur to thee that the blue thou must cultivate could be an adept? Now Kurlgeir was stricken.
Cultivate an adept? Rather would I remain forever outcast.
But if the oracle is always right...
That may be. I asked how to restore myself to my pack. The oracle answered, perhaps the necessary price is too high.
Yet thou also didst specify that the method not violate thy conscience.
My conscience will not permit my craven catering to the abomination that is an adept.
Then it must be something else. Some other blue. A field of blue flowers.
Werewolves are not farmers,
Kurlgeir cried indignantly.
It must be the blue adept. Yet the only cultivation I could do without shame would be the turf over his grave. I shall not seek the blue adept.
Stile considered. If, as we fear, thou hast doomed thyself to remain outcast from thy kind, why not travel with me? I've decided to remain in this frame, but this is pointless unless I locate and nullify the threat against my life. And that threat surely relates to who and what I am. Without magic with which to defend myself, I shall likely be in need of protection.
The Lady Unicorn is capable of protecting thee ably enough.
From the ill favor of an adept? Kurlgeir paced the ground.
Now, if I refuse, I brand myself coward.
No, I did not mean to imply.
Thou hardly needst to. But also I doubt the mayor would care to have the like of me along, and I would not impose.
Nasa stood. She took Kurlgeir's hand, glanced briefly into his eyes, then turned away. The werewolf faced Stile.
Nasa has a way with words. It seems outcasts had best support each other, though they be natural enemies. We all shall likely die, and for a foolish cause, but it is as fitting a mode as any.
I gotta choose those, harsh voices on some of those people, don't I? Good evening. Joy in general. Good to see you.
Kurlgeir, the werewolf.
Gotta love it. So let's see. We're 2 chapters in so far tonight. We're definitely getting into 3, maybe 4. Who knows? We'll see how the night goes. So, now Stile has made it to the Oracle. He has found out that he needs to know thyself. That is his only chance of success. He has met Kurlgeir the werewolf, who needs to cultivate blue, which, at the moment, we don't know what blue is. So there we have it. Stile, new to this world, has managed to gather himself an entourage of a werewolf and a unicorn.
Wouldst that all of us could acquire so great of a group of people? 'Twouldst be a lovely thing, would it not?
But there we go. So, one moment, drink one more thing of drink here, and then we will start into chapter 12. And hello and welcome to anybody who happens to be out there in whichever platform you're on, be it TikTok, Kick, YouTube, or Twitch. Thank you for joining me for this continued reading of Split Infinity. Of course, if you are enjoying it and have missed other chapters, you can always stop out to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, to catch up on all of the previous chapters. I record these as I go along, which is why I don't verbally chat with anybody while I am reading the chapters, because I am recording these and I post them all up on YouTube once I have finished for the evening. So let's sit back, relax, and dive into chapter 12. Chapter 12. Black. Who is the closest adept? Stile asked. Not the blue. We won't check that one if you're along. Kurlgeir shifted to wolf form and sniffed the breeze. He shifted back.
The black, methinks.
Black it is, Stile agreed. He would have preferred a more scientific selection, but science was not, it seemed, trustworthy in this frame. Convenience would have to do. They left the palace together, Stile riding Nesa, the wolf ranging easily beside. They bore west again, toward the castle of the Black Adept. Now that the decision was made, Stile had second thoughts about purpose and safety. Was he really doing the right thing? All he could do now was see it through, and after checking out the Black Adept, he would decide whether it was worth checking out others. This was hardly his idea of sword and sorcery adventure, which was perhaps just as well. He suspected that in real life, more evil magicians prevailed than barbarian heroes. Nesa had located a supply of grain and had some in a bag tied to the saddle. She would not have to make long halts for grazing. Traveling at speed, they made excellent progress, covering 50 of this frame's miles in about 2.5 hours. Stile had done some endurance riding on Proton, and knew it would take an excellent horse to maintain even half this pace. Thereafter, the way became bleak. The turf thinned, remaining verdant only in scattered oases. Stile realized that with a spell, he might procure fresh water and extra food, but did not offer. They did not want magic, and the very notion was contrary to the spirit of his oath. The mountains and valleys gave way to a broad and featureless dark plain that extended to the horizon, oppressed by what seemed to be a permanently looming cloud. Gusts of cutting wind brought choking clouds of dust into their faces. Stile coughed. If this environment reflected the temperament of the Black Adept, the magician was vile indeed. But it was probably a misapprehension. Stile had friends and unfriends, but there were few people he considered to be as evil as his friends seemed to think adepts were. It was said that familiarity bred contempt, but surely ignorance bred error. At last, amid the gloom, a black castle showed. It stood in stark silhouette, no light illuminating it from within. The land about it was so bleak as to seem scorched. Had Stile not known the identity of its occupant, thanks to Kurlgeir's nose, he might readily have guessed. Everything was dead black. As they neared it, Stile suffered intensifying pangs of doubt. Was his curiosity worth the risk of bracing this person? He was running the risk of whatever sorcery the Black Adept had in mind. For what? Just to know who he was in this frame. No, it was more than that, he reminded himself. Another Adept was trying to kill him, and until Stile knew his own identity, he probably would not know who was trying to kill him, or why. The Oracle agreed. It had told him to know himself. Curiosity alone might not be worth it, but life? Security? Yes, that was worth it. What should he do, though, if the lives of his friends were threatened on his behalf? Would he use his magic then to help them? No, he could not. His oath had been made, and Stile had never in his life broken his given word. Nasa had to give him leave, and now he knew she would not, because she believed that to release him would be to turn him into the monster that an adept would be, and she would rather die. He had better see to their mutual health by mundane means, staying alert. Yet there was no call to be foolish. Nasa, he murmured, is there any way to approach this castle secretly and depart in the same fashion? I don't need to brace the magician directly. I think one look at him will tell me whether he is alive or dead, or whether he resembles me. If we check, and the Black Adept is alive, not only is he not me, he is likely to do something horrible to me, and to thee I fear. Kurlgeir growled assent in an I told thee so tone. The two of them expected this to be such a bad experience that Stile would no longer question the validity of their hatred of adepts. Increasingly, Stile was being convinced. Nasa halted. She nicked her nose, indicating that he should dismount. Stile did so. Then she reached back as she lifted one hind foot. She put her teeth to it, as if chewing an itch, and the white sock came off. Stile stared. The term sock was descriptive, not literal. It was merely a patch of white hair about the foot. Yet she still held the white sock in her mouth, and her foot had turned black. She nudged the sock at him, then went for the other hind foot. Soon Stile held a pair of white socks, one larger than the other. Nasa nudged him again. But I can't wear these, he protested. These are your socks. Thy socks. Nasa nosed him impatiently again. Stile shrugged and tried donning a unicorn sock over his boot. It was hoof-shaped at the extremity, yet it fit admirably. More unicorn magic, of course. In a moment, he stood, handsomely garbed in unicorn socks. But the white color extended beyond the socks now. His feet looked like hooves, his legs like hair, his arms. Where were his arms? Kurlgeir growled appreciatively, seeming to think Stile's appearance had improved. Stile looked again, startled. He looked like a unicorn. A white unicorn. He remained human, but in illusion he was the forepart of the animal. Behind him stretched a ghostly body, equine. Nasa had given him concealment. Who would worry about a unicorn poking him around the premises? Every time I think I understand thee, Nasa, thou comest up with some new device, he said admiringly. I'll return thy socks when we're away from here. Thank thee most kindly. And privately he thought, she didn't mind him benefiting from magic, so long as it was not adept magic. A useful distinction. They went on, a white unicorn, a black unicorn, and a wolf. The dark fog swirled thickly about the castle, helping to conceal them. But could the adept really be ignorant of their presence? It was possible. Why should the Black Adept allow them to intrude when he could so easily hurl a nasty spell at them? Unless he was not paying attention. Surely he had better things to do than sit and watch for trespassers. And if the adept happened to be dead, there should be no danger anymore. So, Stile reasoned, reassuring himself. Yet somehow he did not feel reassured. Kurlgeir made a low growl of warning. They stopped. The wolf had his nose to the ground, frozen there. Stile stooped to look, and his knees gave a warning shock of pain, and the unicorn image halfway buckled. Mustn't do. But he saw what it was, a black line stretching across the basalt. Could it amount to a tripwire? It was a color line, not a wire, but with magic it could perform the same function. That would explain why the adept was not paying attention. He depended on his automatic alert. We'd better pass without touching any lines, Stile murmured. They might be the adept's alert lines. No pun. They all high-stepped carefully over the line. Soon there was another. This one was thicker, as if drawn with coagulating paint. Then a third, actually a ridge. And a fourth, set closer to the last, like a miniature wall. Something funny here, Stile said. Why make an alarm line this solid? It only calls attention to itself. Yet there was nothing to do but go on over. Stile's apprehension was abating as his perplexity grew. He had accepted the notion of magic as a way of life, but why should anyone surround himself with thickening lines? That hardly made sense. The lines came more often now, each more formidable than the last. It became evident that the Black Castle was not a mere edifice of stone or brick, but the innermost manifestation of a rapidly solidifying network of line walls. When the walls passed waist height on Stile and were set only 2 meters apart, he concluded that jumping them was now too risky. They were bound to touch one accidentally and set off the alarm. If this really were an alarm system. Stile now feared it was something quite different. Perhaps an elaborate architectural trap. But it might be no more than a progressive deterrent to intrusion such as theirs. A passive defense, showing that the Black Adept was not really the monster he was reputed to be. Maybe. I think we had better walk between walls for a while, Stile said. It is either that or start climbing over them. This thing is turning into a maze, and we may be obliged to follow its rules. And he wondered, nervously, was that the way of adepts? To force intruders stage by stage into a set mold that would lead inevitably into their corruption or destruction. Was that the way of all adept magic? In that case, the fears of the unicorn and werewolf with respect to Stile himself could be well founded. Suppose he was, or had been, the Black Adept. That given limitless power, he had chosen to isolate himself in this manner, and would do so again, given the power again. Helping no one, having no friends. Power corrupted. They turned left, walking between walls. As it happened, it was indeed a maze, or at least a complicated labyrinth. The inner wall turned at right angles, making a passage toward the interior, and gradually elevated in height. Soon, a ceiling developed, from an extension of one wall, making this a true hall. The passage kept curving about, usually sharply, often doubling back on itself, so that it was impossible to try to keep track of direction. Kurlgeir, your nose can lead us out again? Stile inquired nervously. The wolf growled assent. The line labyrinth seemed to continue on indefinitely. One light fused in from somewhere, allowing them to see, but there was nothing to see except more blank walls of black material. The castle, for they had to be well inside the edifice proper now, was as silent as a burial vault. That hardly encouraged Stile. On and on they went. Every time it seemed they were getting somewhere, the passage doubled back and paralleled itself for another interminable distance, then doubled back again. Was this whole castle nothing but many kilometers? Many miles, he corrected himself, of passages? This passage continued to get narrower, becoming more like a tunnel, until Nasa was having difficulty making the turns. Her horn projected in front far enough to scrape a wall when she tried to make a hairpin turn, and her effort to avoid such contact put her into contortions and slowed her considerably. But she didn't want to change form, in case they were still under observation. That would betray her special talent. In addition, she still wore the saddle, which would become a liability in her other form. It seemed her own clothing transformed with her, but not things originating externally, and their supplies were in the saddlebags. Enough, Stile said at last. We can wander forever in this mess and die of starvation when our supplies run out. Let's tackle the dread Adept forthrightly. And he banged his fist into the wall. That surface was oddly soft and warm, as if only recently extruded from some volcanic fissure. It gave under the impact, slightly, then sprang back with a twang. The sound reverberated along the hall, and on out of sight. It seemed to be traveling along the same convolutions they were traveling, but much faster, tirelessly amplifying as it went. Soon the whole region was humming with it. Then the castle itself. Gradually it faded, as the harmonics of different walls overlapped and muted each other, and finally died away amphorously. Must have come to the end of the line, Stile said. Let's go on, not worrying about contact. They moved on rapidly. At every sharp corner, Nasa's horn scraped, and the twang reverberated. Nothing else happened. Then, at last, the walls opened out into a moderate chamber. In the center stood a great black dragon. The creature opened its mouth to roar, but no sound came forth, only a tongue like a line drawn by a pen. Stile contemplated the creature. He had never seen a living dragon before, but recognized the general form from the literature of legend. Yet this was an unusual variant. The creature, like the castle, seemed to be made of thickened lines. Its legs were formed of loops, its body of closely interlocked convolutions, and its tail was like knitwork. It was as if it had been shaped meticulously from a single line, phenomenally intricate. Yet it was solid, as a knit sweater is solid. The dragon stepped forward, showing its black-lined teeth. Stile was so fascinated by the linear effect that he hardly was concerned for his own safety. He recalled the puzzle lines that had intrigued him as a child, in which the pen never left the paper or crossed itself. The most intricate forms could be made along the way by the traveling line. Flowers, faces, animals, even words. But the rules were never broken. The challenge was to find the end of the line, in the midst of the complex picture. This dragon, of course, was three-dimensional. Its lines did touch, did cross, for it was tied together by loops and knots at key places. But the principle remained. The line, though knotted, never terminated, never divided. The whole dragon, as far as Stile could tell, was a construct of a single thread. Stile became aware of the posture of his companions. Both were facing the dragon in a state of combat readiness, standing slightly ahead of Stile.
Enough of this,
He exclaimed. This is my quest. You two should not endanger yourselves in my stead. I'll fight mine own battle. He stooped to pull off his unicorn socks, and again his knees flared in pain, causing him to drop ignominiously to the floor. He kept forgetting his injury at critical times. He righted himself tediously, then bent at the waist and drew off one sock, then the other. Now he was himself again. He approached Nasa. May I? He inquired. She nodded, her eyes not leaving the dragon. Stile picked up one real foot and pulled the sock over it until it merged with her hair. Then he moved around and did the other. In the midst of this, he looked up and met Kurlgeyer's gaze. Yes, he was handling the unicorn's very private feet. Horses did not like to have their feet impeded or restrained in any way. Many would kick violently in such circumstances, even breaking a leg in the frantic effort to free it, or re-breaking it to escape the restraint of a splint. Thus, a broken leg was often doom for a horse. Unicorns were no doubt worse. Nasa, when she joined him, had yielded her whole spirit to him. Then she had discovered he was adept. Anathema. Now Stile stood before the dragon, drawing his rapier. He still was not expert in its use, but the dragon did not know that. Would the point be effective, or was it better to have a cutting edge so he could sever a line? Would the dragon unravel like knitwork if he did cut its line? These were questions he would have to answer by experiment. The dragon was evidently assessing Stile at the same time. The white unicorn had suddenly become a man. Magic was involved. Was it safe to take a bite? Stile, though quite nervous about the encounter, was experienced in dealing with animals. He had backed down hostile dogs and cats on his employer's farm, as part of assorted initiations, and of course had calmed many a spooked horse. Later he had taken his turn in various game arenas, moving larger beasts of prey about with whip and prod. He had never faced a dragon before, but the basic principles of animal management should apply, he hoped. He acted with apparent confidence, advancing on the dragon with his rapier point orienting on the creature's black knot nose. The noses of most animals were tender, and often were more important psychologically than the eyes. Now, I'm not looking for trouble, dragon, Stile said with affected calmness. I came to pay a call on the Black Adept. I only want to meet him, not to hurt him. Kindly stand aside and let us pass. Stile heard a snort of amazement behind him. Nasa had never imagined bracing a dragon in its lair this way. The dragon, too, was taken aback. What manner of man approached it with such imperious confidence? But it was a beast, not a man, and could not reason well, and it had its orders. In fact, anything constructed from loops of cord might have trouble reasoning well. What kind of a brain could be fashioned from knotted string? It opened its jaws and took a snap at Stile. Stile stepped smoothly to the side. His rapier flicked out, neatly pricking the sensitive nose. The dragon jerked back with a soundless yipe. That was a gentle warning, Stile said evenly, privately overjoyed at his success. The thing did feel pain. My patience has limits. Begone, dragon. Baffled more by Stile's attitude than his physical prowess, the dragon scuttled back. Stile stepped forward, frowning. The dragon whimpered, again without sound, then unraveled. Stile stared. The creature was disintegrating. First, its hurting nose tightened into a close knot, then popped into non-existence. Then its muzzle and teeth went, the latter becoming tangles in a string that disappeared as the string went taut. Then the eyes and ears. Headless, the thing still faced Stile, backing away. The neck went, and the front legs, the pace of unraveling speeding up as it continued. Very soon there was nothing but a line, and this snapped back into the wall like a rubber band. The whole dragon had indeed been no more than an intricately wrought string. Now it was gone. Yet that string, when shaped, had seemed formidable, and had reacted with normal brute reflexes. Surely it would have chomped him, had he allowed it. It could have killed him. The whole thing. String. Stile breathed. And this whole castle? More string? For what purpose? Unicorn and Wolf shrugged. Who could understand the ways of an adept? Nasa made a little nose back the way they had come, inquiring whether he had seen enough and was ready to get out of here. But Stile shook his head no, grimly. More than ever, he wanted to identify the proprietor of this castle. He wanted to be absolutely certain it was not now, and never had been, he. They walked on down the passage, which narrowed again beyond the dragon's lair, but did not constrict as much as before. Again the way folded, and back again, and yet again, endlessly. Damn it, Stile swore. We could die of old age in here, looking for the master of this castle. If he lives. I'm going to force the issue. Kurlgeir looked at him warily, but did not protest. This was Stile's venture, to foul up as he pleased. Stile made a fist and banged repeatedly on the wall, making the reverberations build tremendously until the whole castle seemed to shake. Black Adept! Show thyself, he bawled. I demand only to see thy face, then I depart.
Follow the line,
A voice replied. A double line snaked into view ahead, looping into itself. As they approached it, the lines were treated like string drawn in from a distance. It resembled the dragon in this respect, constantly disappearing into itself. But it was not part of the wall. Soon the line led them to a large central hall they were unlikely to have found thus expeditiously by themselves. A man stood there, facing them. He was garbed completely in black, and seemed to have a black tail. But the tail was the line they had just followed. The line, Stile said, finally putting it all together. It is from thee. This whole castle is thou, the solidified line of thy past.
Now thou knowest, the Black Adept said coldly. I have met thy demand, intruder.
Yes, Stile agreed, not liking the man's tone. This was definitely not himself. The adept stood half a meter taller, and his appearance and voice were unlike anything Stile was or could be. Not that the adept was grotesque, he really looked rather ordinary, but he was certainly not Stile. Now I shall depart, thanking thee for thy courtesy.
No courtesy, intruder. Thine animals shall go, for they are of dark complexion, even burdened with thy supplies. It were a shame I must free them from. Thou shalt remain.
And the Black Adept cast out his line. It amplified immediately into an intricate prison bar wall, hardening in place between Stile and his two companions. Alarmed, he stepped to it, but the bars were already like steel. He tried to go around it, but the wall extended itself faster than he could move. He drew his rapier, but realized the bars were as hard as its metal was, even if it had a cutting edge. He was trapped. Stile turned to the Adept. "Why?" he asked. "Why hold me here?"
"Why didst thou intrude on my domain?"
the Adept replied. This was awkward. Stile did not care to give his reason, and would not lie. "I can say only that I meant thee no harm," he said.
"Know ye not I suffer no human intrusion into my premises? The penalty is to remain."
To remain. Never to depart? Death? Here? Nasa tried to get through the wall separating them, but could not. Even the wolf was too large to fit between the bars. They could not help him directly. "You two had better leave," Stile said. "I will have to settle with the Adept myself." Nasa hesitated. Stile knew she could get through the bars by changing into her firefly form, but he didn't want her to betray her talents to the Black Adept, who could readily make a lion cage to confine the insect. No sense getting her trapped, too. "Get out of here," he snapped. "I'll be all right. Just leave the supplies."
"Do not," the Black Adept warned, "lest I throw out a net to capture thee too."
A net. Did the Adept know about her firefly form after all? Or was that merely a manner of speaking? This was risky. Stile made a violent signal to Nasa to go. She seemed dubious, but retreated. The wolf followed her, tail held low. This was evidently part of the Adept's revenge. The separation of friends. Stile faced the Adept, drawing his sword. But the Adept was gone. Only the new wall remained, extending in either direction into corridors that curved out of sight. Yet the Adept was aware of him. The wall itself was evidence of that. Catching the Adept in the maze of his own castle would surely be an impossible task. The Adept could form a jail cell around Stile at any time. Why hadn't the magician done just that? Why permit an intruder the limited run of the castle? The Black Adept, logically, should either kill him or throw him out, and seemed to have the power to do both. Only the magic of another Adept could... No. He had made a vow to do no magic himself. He would muddle through without magic, whatever came. Stile walked along the barred wall. It carried on through folded passages, bisecting rooms, halls, even stairs. It led him through turrets and down into deep dungeons. There seemed to be no dead ends. The way was continuous. The Adept, it seemed, was showing off his premises, unable to resist allowing another person to appreciate their extent. Ah, vanity, however obliquely it manifested. Stile continued on into a chamber where a human skeleton lay. It was complete and clean, sprawled on the floor. He pondered that for some time. Why would such a grisly artifact be tolerated in the castle? It was unlikely to be artificial. The Adept's magic was evidently tied up in lines, proof enough that he was not Stile's alternate self, had any doubt remained. In fact, Stile could have saved himself a certain amount of mischief by recognizing that and turning back when he spied the very first line, or when he recognized the dragon as a construct of lines. The hints were there to be interpreted, had he only been paying proper attention. Ah, hindsight. This skeleton was a separate entity, not part of a line, so it had to be authentic. Stile kicked at an arm, and it broke away from the floor with a crumbling snap. It had lain there for so long it had adhered. The Black Adept had said that the penalty for intrusion was to remain. He had not actually said he would kill the intruder. Perhaps he had obscure scruples, not liking to get blood directly on his lines. But to remain here indefinitely without food or water was to die. That, it seemed, was to be Stile's fate. When the two animals, with the two animals permitted to escape to carry some hint of warning to others. They could tell the world they had seen a man imprisoned for annoying the Black Adept. Thoroughly reasonable, effective, and nasty. The Adept really did not care for the favor of others. He just wanted them to stay away. This was no show-off tour Stile was on. It was a fiendish punishment tour. His demise would be more painful, now that he understood exactly what was coming. Truly, the Adepts were not to be trifled with, or liked. But Stile knew he had asked for this. He had been warned that Adepts were dangerous, but had charged in anyway. Perhaps he had not really believed in the threat this fantasy land of fays had not seemed wholly real to him. He had not taken its threats seriously enough. Now, as he wandered, and his thirst grew, his perspective shifted. This frame was becoming more real than that of Proton. Somehow the attacks by monsters hadn't impressed him deeply. Those encounters had been like individual games. Serious, yet also unserious. But thirst, hunger, boredom, fatigue, and loneliness, these compelled belief of a fundamental nature. By the time he died, he would really believe. He thought of appealing to the Black Adept, of begging for mercy, and knew immediately that that would be useless. The punishment was to die in confinement and hopelessness, without further communication, without dignity or recognition. Those who violated the Adept's privacy were doomed to share it, completely. The Black Adept was neither noble nor wicked. He merely enforced his strictures effectively. No one bothered an Adept without good reason, which was what Nasa and Kurlgeir had tried to tell him. He had simply had to learn the hard way. And Stile himself? Was he really an Adept? Had his phase self been like this, an aloof, cynical magician? No wonder his companions distrusted that. If his possible exercise of his magic talent meant that he would lose all sense of friendship, honor, and decency, then certainly his magic should be banned. It was better to die a feeling man than to live as an inhuman robot. No, correct that. He was sinking in a false cliché. Not all robots were unfeeling. Sheen, where was she now? His week, if he counted correctly, was just about over. The immediate threat of death in Proton? Or on Proton? No, these were two frames of the same world, and he was in one or in the other. This threat had been abated by time. Now it was phase he had to escape, and Proton that represented relief. Stile wandered along the wall until darkness closed. Then he eased himself to the floor carefully, taking care of his knees. He leaned his back against the bars and experimentally flexed one knee. It actually bent fairly far before hurting. Had it begun to heal? Unlikely. Other parts of the body healed, but knees did not. Their conglomeration of ligament and bone prevented blood from circulating well there. Elbows could heal. They did not have to support constant weight. Knees had to be tough, and so, paradoxically, were more vulnerable than other joints. The anonymous enemy had struck well, lasering his knees, condemning him to a lingering torture similar in its fashion to what the Black Adept was now inflicting. Food for thought there. But when not under pressure, his knees could bend almost all the way. He could assume a squatting posture when not squatting. Fine comfort that was, as if his knees mattered when his body was doomed. After a time, he climbed back to his feet. This remained a chore, without flexing his knees under pressure, and walked to an interior chamber to relieve a call of nature. He did not like soiling the castle floor, but really had no choice, and perhaps it served the Adept right. Then he returned to the barred wall, settled down again, and nodded off to sleep. He dreamed he was a robot, with no flesh to warm his metal, no true consciousness to enliven his lifelessness. He woke several times in the night, feeling the deepening cold, much more thirsty than he ought to be. Psychological, of course, but still bothersome. He wished he had warm Nasa in any form to sleep against. Nasa had given him companionship too, a warmth of the spirit. After his years basically as a loner, he had adapted very quickly to that association. It filled a need. She had changed to human form to please him, but would have pleased him anyway. At least he had done the right thing, sending her away. She could return to her grazing, and perhaps the werewolf would keep her company sometimes. So cold. He hunched within his insubstantial clothing. One little spell could so readily cure this. Give me some heat to warm my feet. No magic. It might be crazy, but he would not violate his oath. Only if a firefly flew up and cried, "Stile, do magic," would he indulge. And he didn't want Nasa risking herself that way anyway. He curled into an uncomfortable ball and slept again. It was better than being awake. By morning, Stile's whole mouth was so dry it felt like leather. He must have been sleeping with it open. He worked his rock-like tongue around, moving his jaws, and managed to find a small pocket of saliva to spread about. Now he had to get up and what? The bars remained, and would not disappear until his skeleton joined the other. He had nowhere to go, nothing to do. Yet he had to do something. He was still cold. Exercise was the only answer. His hunger and thirst had abated for the nonce, but his body was stiff. He climbed to his feet and limped to his makeshift privy. Shame to waste fluid, but as long as life remained, the bodily processes continued. He resumed his trek along the barred wall, moving rapidly enough to generate some heat, slowly enough to conserve energy. Pointless travel, except that it was better than just lying down and dying. Plenty of time for the latter later. There was no escape. The labyrinth of the castle was interminable, and the barred wall was too. The Black Adept only had one kind of magic, but he was very thorough about that. Theoretically, there should be an end to the wall somewhere, but that end was the Adept himself. What use then to search for it? No logic, no reasonable discussion could move a man with the power and alienation this one had shown. The Black Adept was in his fashion like a proton citizen. A citizen! Kurlgeir had said the people of Phase were the same as those of Proton, or had been, before the shifting of serfs had become extensive. An Adept could indeed be a citizen in his alternate self. In the one frame, the instrument of power was wealth. In the other, magic. In both cases, arrogance reigned supreme. Stile kept moving. He had won marathons in the game. He could survive for some time when he put his will to it. If he got up to the Black Adept, he might incapacitate the man and escape. Or kill him, since the Adept seemed willing to let Stile die. No, he did not want to be a killer himself. Monsters were one thing. But the Adept was a man. Stile was willing merely to circle around the Adept, to get outside the barrier and escape. Did his mental decision not to kill a man differentiate him from the Adept mode? Could it be taken as evidence that he would not be as thoroughly corrupted by the power of magic as other Adepts had been? He hoped so. Strange that there was no food in this bleak castle. Didn't the Black Adept eat? Probably his food supplies were well hidden in a convoluted storehouse, which would naturally be outside this barrier. Still, that raised more conjectures. Since this adept did not conjure things from nothing the way Stile's magic had done, he must have to obtain natural food somewhere. Did the Black Adept have to trade with peasants for supplies of grain, eggs, cabbages? He could not, then, live in absolute seclusion. His ready use of language suggested the same. He had contact with others. He just didn't like it. Would any of those others be coming here to the castle? Would they help Stile? No, that seemed unlikely. The adept could have supplies for a year at a time. Stile moved slowly, conserving his strength, balancing his generated warmth against his thirst and hunger. He gave up following the interminable wall and cut across the center of the castle as well as he could. But all the interior passages were dead ends. The configuration differed here. He wished he had some quick way to analyze the lines, but the castle was too complex. It would take him far longer than he had left to grasp its layout and locate the adept. He also wished he had a good cutting tool to sever a line, since all of this was a single line. He could cut the adept off from his castle anywhere. From his past. Would everything unravel in the manner of the dragon? But there was nothing. His dagger could not damage the stone-like hardness of the material. The outer walls had some give, but here they had none. Only a diamond drill or saw could do the job. Or magic. No! All day Stile fought with himself, the thought of magic becoming more attractive as his physical condition deteriorated. But he refused to yield. It didn't matter that no one could know if he conjured a cupful of water to drink. An oath was an oath. He would expire with his integrity intact. That was one thing the Black Adept could not deprive him of. At last, night seeped into the castle again. Stile sank down to sleep, but could not. He did not want to yield himself up so quietly to extinction. He found the harmonica in his hand, unbidden. He had avoided making music because of its magical connotation. Magic could occur in the ambiance of music, even when he did not voice it. His saddle had appeared, obviously conjured by his unconscious wish while he made music. But wouldn't it be all right to play now, so long as he willed no magic? Music reminded him of Toon so long ago, and it was fitting to think of her again as he concluded his own tenure. He played. The music wafted out, permeating the corridors and windows and convolutions of the castle, striking harmonics in the walls. He was making the sound, but he was listening too, and it was absolutely beautiful. He was mastering the harmonica, playing it with his heart, evoking a feeling of melody he had seldom before achieved. Perhaps it was his swan song, his final gesture. Nevertheless, it was a satisfying way to, at last. Tiring of even this, he put the instrument away and dropped into sleep. This time it was more peaceful, as if his fast had freed him of material concerns. He was awakened by a low growl. Stile's eyes cracked open, but his body did not move. He knew where his sword was. He needed to locate the animal, and to decide whether it was worth trying to fight. Why trade a quick death for a slow one? Then, in the dark, a voice.
Stile.
Kurlgeir, he said. Stile put his face to the bars to get closer. This isn't safe for thee.
Nasa went to the oracle. It said curtain. Nasa did not understand what that meant, but I do. I sniffed around the castle. One corner of it intersects the curtain. Follow me.
The curtain, of course. Except I can't do it. I swore no magic. It takes a spell to pass through.
Thou art true to thine oath. Thou couldst have escaped ere now, hadst thou been otherwise. But fear not, I will put thee through.
Relieved, Stile followed the werewolf, pacing him on the other side of the wall. So Nasa had donated her single question the Oracle permitted to his cause. He would not have asked her to do that, yet now accepted the gesture gratefully. It seemed only moments before Kurlgeir brought him to the curtain. One small section of his prison intersected it. Apparently, the Black Adept was not aware of it. That suggested the Adept was alive in both frames, unable to perceive or cross the curtain.
We shall wait for thee at the Oracle's palace,
Kurlgeir said, as Stile approached the glimmer.
Be mindful of the trust the Mayor places in thee, setting thee free of this frame.
I don't know how long it will take me to, but the werewolf was already casting the spell. Stile passed through. All right, guys, 3 chapters down. Chapters 10, 11, and 12. And here is where we will call it for the evening. I hope you have enjoyed this reading of Split Infinity by Piers Anthony, read to you by your happy narrator, Sir Arminius. I will be back again tomorrow with some stompy mech action, Mech Warrior Online. I hope you guys will stop in to join me, but until then, thank you. The greatest gift that you can give to a streamer is a gift of your time. And I appreciate that you have given me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or the 2.5 hours. Joy in general, as always, thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed. If you missed any of it, you know where to find it. On my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. I will see you guys again. If nothing else, I will see you guys again next week for more Split Infinity. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and I will see you guys all again very soon. Good night, all.